Welcome back to the channel, the absolute only place where that little glass jar of old coins collecting dust on your shelf, yeah, that exact one, could secretly be holding the ticket to an unexpected fortune. I am Harry, and today we are diving deep into the fascinating, high-stakes world of something we have all held in our hands at some point, the legendary Lincoln Wheat Penny. But listen, do not make the mistake of thinking we are just talking about pocket change here. Today, I'm going to reveal the fiercely guarded numismatic secrets behind two very specific dates from the Denver Mint. Dates that, if they hide the right microscopic error or have miraculously survived in the absolute perfect condition, cross the line from being worth a few mere cents to igniting massive bidding wars at the most exclusive auction houses on the planet. If this is your very first time here, do yourself a massive favor and hit that subscribe button right now because the classified information I'm about to hand over, well, it is exactly the kind of knowledge that elite collectors use to build empires. Go grab your coins, get a good magnifying glass, embrace yourself, because what you are going to discover in the next few minutes will completely change the way you look at money. Let's begin. 1953, D. Wheat Penny. We move forward in our numismatic time machine to the year 1953. The United States has firmly entered the legendary Eisenhower era. The intense anxieties of the early Cold War are looming heavily over the nation. But simultaneously, the American dream is expanding at an absolutely blistering, unstoppable pace. New highways are being paved, massive suburban neighborhoods are springing up seemingly overnight, and the booming consumer culture demands an uninterrupted ocean of physical currency to keep the registers ringing. Down in the sprawling, heavy industrial floors of the Denver Mint, the presses are experiencing unprecedented wear and tear as they desperately try to meet the nation's hunger for cents. They ended up churning out an unbelievable 700 million wheat pennies marked with the Denver D that year. Because of this absolute tsunami of copper, a heavily circulated, brown, beat-up 1953 D is fundamentally just a placeholder in a beginner's coin folder, generally worth no more than a few cents over its face value. However, the sheer violence and speed of this massive production run created a chaotic environment where absolute perfection became statistically almost impossible, which is exactly why perfection from 1953 commands such astronomical premiums today. Imagine the pure brutality of the minting process that year. Hundreds of millions of freshly struck pennies were violently ejected into massive steel hoppers, crashing heavily against one another, acquiring deep scratches, dents, and contact marks before they ever even left the facility. For a single 1953 D wheat penny to somehow navigate that dangerous metal-on-metal war zone without taking a single visual hit, and then survive the next 7 decades without its vibrant, original red luster oxidizing into a dark brown, is a mathematical anomaly. When elite collectors look at a 1953 D graded at an astonishing MS67, or even MS67 Plus red by top-tier grading services, they are not just looking at a coin. They are looking at an incredibly rare survivor of an industrial gauntlet. That flawless preservation commands massive respect and equally massive money at auction. But beyond the hunt for pristine condition, the immense pressure put on the Denver Mint's equipment in 1953 created a playground for die errors, specifically the highly celebrated BIE variety. The steel dies used to strike the pennies were constantly cracking under the immense, repetitive tonnage of the presses. One of the most famous places for the die to crack was right between the letters B and E in the word Liberty stamped on the front of the coin. As the steel die cracked, the molten copper would flow up into that tiny fissure during the strike, creating a raised, distinct vertical line of metal that looks exactly like a capital letter I squeezed between the B and the E. Hence, the legendary BIE error was born. While you are meticulously examining the date and the notoriously hand-punched D-Wheat mint mark for any signs of human error or repunching, you must deeply analyze the word liberty. If you spot that raised, anomalous line of copper interrupting the letters, you are holding a fascinating, physical testament to the mechanical failure of the United States Mint. Combining a brilliant, uncirculated red finish with a dramatic die break or a repunched mint mark elevates this otherwise incredibly common piece of 1950s history into a highly sought-after numismatic treasure. It is the ultimate proof that in the world of rare coins, massive fortunes are quietly hiding in the microscopic details that everyone else casually throws away. 1950, D-Wee by Penny. I want you to travel back in time with me to the dawn of a completely new, highly uncertain decade. It is the year 1950. The dust from the Second World War has barely settled, and yet the globe is already holding its breath once again as the Korean War erupts. But back home, inside the borders of the United States, an incredible, roaring economic engine is firing on all cylinders. The post-war industrial boom is in full swing, and cash is flowing through the hands of the working class faster than ever before. To keep up with this explosive demand for daily commerce, the Denver Mint, sitting high up in the rugged Colorado mountains, fires up its massive mechanical presses to absolute maximum capacity. The direct result of this relentless production is the 1950 wheat penny carrying the distinct D mint mark. Now, I am going to be brutally honest with you right out of the gate. They struck over 334 million of these little copper coins. Because of that staggering production number, if you pull a 1950D out of an old drawer today, darkened by decades of oxygen, heavily scratched, with Lincoln's face completely smoothed out from sliding across countless wooden shop counters, you are looking at a coin worth maybe 15 cents. But here is the critical turning point where the master numismatists completely separate themselves from the amateurs. The immense value hidden inside this specific year does not come from a low mintage. It comes from the nearly impossible miracle of pristine survival and the microscopic mistakes made by exhausted mint workers. Let's talk about survival first. Copper is an incredibly volatile, living metal. The absolute fraction of a second a 1950D penny was struck. It emerged from the press glowing with a fiery, brilliant, mirror-like red finish. But instantly, the clock of decay started ticking. Humidity, oxygen, and the natural oils from human fingers immediately attacked the copper, slowly choking out that vibrant red and turning it into a dull, muddy brown. Finding a 1950D today that was somehow perfectly sealed away in a dark bank bag, completely escaping the destructive atmosphere of the earth to retain 100% of its original mint red color, is astonishing. When a coin like that is placed under the intense halogen lights of professional graders like PCGS or NGC and receives an elite grade of MS67 red, it transforms from pocket change into a historical artifact worth thousands of dollars. But survival is only half the magic. The real thrill hunt lies in the legendary repunched mint mark, or RPM errors. In 1950, that little D under the date was not precisely carved by a laser. It was violently hammered into the steel working die by a human being holding a heavy mallet and a small steel punch. It was an exhausting, highly repetitive physical task. If the mint employee struck the punch, felt the impression was too weak, and decided to strike it a second time but slightly misaligned the tool, boom! A dramatic secondary D would appear offset, peeking out from underneath or to the side of the primary letter. When you look at your 1950D under a jeweler's loupe, stare intensely at that mint mark. If you see the undeniable doubling of that letter, you have just found a piece of documented human error frozen in copper, instantly multiplying the historical and financial value of your coin on the collector's market.